I think what I'm seeing most is a lack of scrappiness, and a lack of grit.
Hey, hey, tell me more.
Welcome back to Tell Me More with me, CJ Quarterball. Tell Me More exists for curious people who want to know more about life and how this world works. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by a good friend of mine, Marquita Farmer Lewis. Marquita, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh man, Marquita and I go way, way back. So,
Way back.
way back. Marquita, tell the people about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do now?
Well, I am Marquita Farmer Lewis. I live in Philadelphia with my wonderful, sweet, kind-hearted husband and our emotional support Nintendo Switch that we love to play to stay sane. And I have been my first, career was in education. So I was a teacher for a few years, and then went into the nonprofit sector, working a lot in the HR field. And now, specifically, I am focused on talent acquisition and working at a media company, bringing in sales folks and revenue people. So, recruiting for, I guess, the business functions and not editorial functions. So, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you've had one of those careers where, kind of like me, whether intentionally or unintentionally,
Mhm.
you've spent a lot of time with Gen Z. First,
Yes.
educating them, and then in the
Yes.
nonprofit world, hiring them, and now in this talent acquisition world, these are the people you're interviewing.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious, from your perspective,
Mhm.
what do you think about this generation?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, but I do want to say, I don't want to speak in generalities because, there's not every generation is a monolith. That's one thing I hated about how they spoke about millennials, because I'm a
Mhm.
geriatric millennial, and there are a lot of things that people would say, and I'm like, why are you writing these articles about our $5 coffees? Like,
Yes, the
like,
avocado toast is why you can't buy homes.
exactly. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I don't want to perpetuate that, but I will say, it's been interesting, kind of not only hiring Gen Z, but also managing Gen Z. So I think the things that I'm seeing most are a bit distressing, because I just remember being a kid and we didn't really have the internet. Like, I'm in that generation that was like internet, but also we still have the encyclopedia where we have to do research.
Mhm.
And so there's this, I think, scrappiness that I don't see as much in Gen Z. And I think a lot of that has to do with, I mean, everything is at your fingertips now. Even I fall into that. Like, I just pick up my phone and get whatever I need. I don't have to like work hard for it, in terms of like, oh, I gotta, get up and read an encyclopedia to write this paper or to understand, this concept I'm trying to, understand. But I'm rambling a little bit. But my point is, I think what I'm seeing most is a lack of scrappiness, and a lack of grit. I was talking with a friend, and she was telling me how her sister is also in talent acquisition. And she was doing an interview with someone, and they brought their parents to the interview.
They brought mom and dad to the interview?
Both parents to the interview. And this is not the first time I've heard that. So
But
different
so
things like,
when you say
yeah,
brought them to the interview, you mean
yes.
like sit in the room as
Yeah, well, they didn't sit in the room. They sat outside of
okay.
the room, but they
Okay.
walked their baby in and were like, "We're here to support our baby," and sat outside the room while they did their interview,
Wow.
which is
Okay.
so wild to me. Or having parents call a business when their kid didn't get a job, and it's like, this is a grown person. Like, what is happening?
You are a full
Um,
adult.
a full adult, a full adult.
Wow.
And then I think the other thing, especially that I see in my work, is so my interviews with folks are is over the phone. Um, and it is surprising to me how many people don't have like phone etiquette. Like I remember I was on this one interview and you hear so many things going on in the background. I remember one of my hiring managers interviewed someone on camera and like they were just showing their whole house and it was a mess. So just like these different kind of like, or they show up to the interview even on screen, just kind of like in their pajamas, yes. This happens regularly.
This is
um
insane.
it's really, really wild. And so I think I don't know what's happening. I think there's like an underlying thing that's happening, and these are just kind of the results, of those things happening, like education not being as strong or important. I feel like in a lot of places and in a lot of families, or like education not being rigorous or challenging enough. So like grit isn't being built, or even like how to write a resume. Some of these resumes, I'm like, why did you do this? Why is your picture this big on your resume? Like, what are you trying? I don't know. And so
The
there's just
irony
like,
of that is for all the information that's available to them, that is in front
Mhm.
of them,
Yes,
you would think someone would go, let me Google how to write a
yes,
resume.
yes, yeah. Or let me get chat. So this is the other thing. Get Chat GPT to help you with your resume. I mean, don't let it lie for you, but like get it to help you format it.
Yeah.
Think of new language. We had thesauruses. You got Chat GPT that can act as a thesaurus for you. Um, uh, but on the other side, what I see a lot or hear a lot actually on my phone interviews is I can tell people are reading from Chat GPT.
Mm,
Like I can tell that you are reading. It's one thing if you're reading notes, that you've written up to prepare for your interview. But even when you're reading like your notes, you sound a little bit more natural. But I have had so many interviews where people are clearly reading from a screen. And I'm like, like, can you at least make it sound believable that these are your words or your thoughts? And so I guess in that way, I kind of contradict myself. They found some resources, to help in interviewing anyway. But at the same time, like not utilizing those resources like
yeah.
effectively. So yeah, I don't know. I think those are the biggest things in terms of like interviewing and hiring people. Yeah.
Man, that's fascinating. Having your
Yeah.
parents come, showing up in your PJs.
Yeah.
Nah. Yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think gosh, where do I go with this? What do you think has been missing for
Mhm.
this generation that they're showing up in this way?
Yeah, yeah. I do think this is a bit of more of a personal story. So I have a nephew who graduated high school last year. And wonderful kid, super great, but um his freshman year of high school was online.
Mm,
And I remember my freshman year of high school, I've got a lot of kind of like nerves and different things like that, but I'm excited. I'm going to a new school, meet new people. And he didn't get that opportunity. And so I think part of, and then even sophomore year, was like kind of in and out. I think part of what is missing is, I guess, just them having like real connections with people, not just like on their video games, because I feel like I learned a lot about life by having conversations with people.
yeah.
When we go out to dinner with any of my nieces and nephews, headphones on, they're on their phones, they're not engaging, and so they don't get to practice conversation. you
Mm,
know they're not made to practice conversation. And so I think for me, it seems that one of the, driving forces is just like lack of connection, and lack of being like learning how to communicate with people. So yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you've been reading my notes, but a couple of my upcoming videos and posts are about the importance of like real connection in
Mhm.
disconnected times,
Mhm.
the art
Mhm.
of conversation.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
a lot of what I do here at Tell Me More, a big
Mhm.
section is preparing for the future. As we think
Mhm.
about AI and like half of all jobs as we know them are
Mhm.
projected to be gone by
Yeah.
2050. And so,
Yep.
what are the skills that you need in order to
Mhm.
survive this future landscape?
Mhm.
One of those skills, it's conversation. It's the
Yeah.
ability to talk to someone.
Yeah.
I live in this really wealthy area. And
Mhm.
because it's not that I'm really wealthy, let's
Mhm.
make that clear for the listeners. I live in a wealthy area.
Uh-huh.
And so that means the schools are incredible. Like
Mhm.
where I
Mhm.
live in New York, I want to
Mhm.
say 7 out of the top 10 school districts are
Mhm.
within like 5 miles of me.
Wow. Mhm.
And what you see are a lot of kids with 4.0s and
Mhm.
matriculating to the Ivy League colleges, and they're coding and they've done all these things, but then you sit them down and you try to have a conversation and
Mhm.
they can't even look you in the eye.
Right.
And I look at their parents and I go,
Mhm.
you guys are very successful. And I
Mhm.
talk to you. These parents, they're Xers and elder millennials for the most part.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I go, you know that it's not the person who is the most competent that gets
Right.
promoted. It's the
Yeah.
person who can have the conversation.
Mhm.
So you, as you've achieved so much success,
Mhm.
why are you not pushing your kids to develop those soft skills that are the
Yes.
ones that really take us through life?
Yes. Yep. Yep. I think sorry, something you made me think of with that is, not having those soft skills. And then when I get to the portion of interviews where I'm like, what compensation are you kind of like,
Mm.
looking for? The numbers, CJ.
Yes.
I'm like, you haven't done anything. You barely could have a conversation with me, and you
Yeah.
fixed your mouth to ask for a six-figure salary.
So this is a thing where they're coming out of college saying
Yes.
110 off the bat.
Yes, yes, and I'm like, "Do you know how long it took some of us to get even $90,000?" Like, this is insane to me, like, and I try not to laugh because sometimes I'm just like, "What in your resume?" I kinda wanna go back and be like, "Let's look at your resume. Tell me where
Hmm.
you show me why you should have." You literally just graduated from college. This is insane. So yeah, it's almost like the parents are teaching them to have high expectations for themselves, but not teaching them how to like actually like and I hate this term, but like show their worth. You
Mm.
know what I mean? In the way that they are able to have a conversation, in the way that they are able to write a resume really well, in the way that they are able to. One thing that a lot of my hiring managers abhor is no thank you email after an interview, and there's a lot of people who don't do that, and that is still like very highly like loved. I would say.
But like, see,
Um,
for us
yeah.
as millennials, that was just
Hmm.
standard practice.
It's standard practice. Yeah, yeah,
Whether you
but
loved the job, hated the job, no matter how
yeah.
the interview went, you sent the
Yeah.
thank you email in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think to your point, whether it's kids who are in public schools that may not be as, well resourced as like the schools in your area, the same things are still happening, in terms of where the discrepancies are, in
Yeah.
terms of like even just like achievement versus then ability to like function
Mm.
in the world. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
So, in this kind of vein of like achievement and ability to
mhm,
function,
mhm.
what are you noticing about the way Gen Z employees handle failure?
It is very difficult for them to first off take criticism in general. I have found, or it leads them to such distress that they can't function anymore.
Mm.
Um, and then, their performance just goes down and down and down because they took one, critique as this is who I am as a person and I can't. So that's been like, again, that grit, that
Yeah.
resiliency. One of the things that our company really stresses is real time feedback. Nobody should, and I say this for any, company, nobody should ever be surprised at their annual review. And so I think for Gen Z, it's kind of like, especially in your first 90 days, you're gonna get some feedback. Let's try this, let's do this. And it's gonna make you better. But I think for some people it makes them crumble,
Mm,
because they just don't have that resiliency, or they think I'm the greatest. How dare you tell me, I'm not? And then they're like, I quit. And I think that's also why I see a lot of on resumes people being at places for 8 months, 6 months, maybe a year,
mhm.
maybe never two. And
Wow.
I am a proponent of you trying different things, kind of moving around. But if you can't stay at a place for even 2 years, and then I'm having conversations with you and you're bad mouthing the place that you were at before, I like, you don't have, like, yeah, you can't, you're not gonna make it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is the trying different things,
Hmm.
figuring some stuff out, but then
Hmm.
you start to see some patterns, and
Yeah.
you want to ask, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you graduated, in 2017, like, or 16 or 15, it's been 10 years. Why have you never stayed at a job longer than a year? Like, that's concerning. Yeah.
And there's also like looking at the self-reflection there. As
Hmm.
someone who has worked for a lot of terrible bosses, I mean,
Hmm.
I literally have built the leadership portion of Tell Me More off of my bad experiences at
Yes.
work. But can you look and say, hey, this is where I've contributed? This is
Hmm.
where I have been wrong.
Hmm.
Because
Right. Yeah.
sometimes it's not them, it's you. And do you
Yeah.
have the ability to say, yeah, that one was on me. I could
Yeah.
have done this better?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Are you talking in terms of like the manager being
The
able to,
the
or
the
the
employee
employee?
being
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
say,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, and I think that's very difficult for them. I don't know. I was talking to a friend and they were like, I think, our generation, we were like shamed. It's like, you got to do better, and like, how dare you bring home a B, and you're like, okay, I got to do better. Or like, why didn't you speak to sister, Sally, when she said hi to you?
hmm,
Like just these, why didn't you have a conversation with her? These are the ways that I think we were challenged that have set us up, for success. That's not happening, in this new
yeah.
generation, and I do think it's causing a lack of resiliency. Not that I'm about shaming, like, don't shame people, but
Some
just
shame is
being able to
good.
challenge, a little bit of shame,
The,
but
some shame is
challenge
good. There's a
challenge them.
level of there's this book called The Soul of Shame by this
Uh-huh.
guy, Kurt Thompson. He's a
Uh-huh.
neuroscientist.
Uh-huh.
And in this book, he talks about we hear the word shame and we immediately
Mhm.
think negative. But there
Mhm.
is some shame that is
Mhm.
positive shame that leads us toward better
Mm.
behaviors. So, like,
Sure,
I
yeah.
shared this story on the podcast, but I'll share it again.
Uh-huh.
Where, for whatever reason, up until college, I didn't lotion my neck. I don't know. I put lotion on my face, on my arms, my hands, but for whatever
No
reason, I
neck.
didn't do my neck. And I was going out with friends, and we all get
Uh-huh.
in the car, we getting ready to go out. It's college, and this girl looks at me and goes, "Yo, why your neck so ashy?" I promise
You were
you,
like,
look, I have not
"Yep,
missed a day of
never
lotion in my
again."
neck since. So there is a
Yes,
good sense of
a
shame.
little bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you do hit something, and these kids are being raised a little bit differently. I
Mhm,
think even in
mhm.
terms of something like respect,
Yes.
and I like, so I'm in an area where I'm working with like high school students. And when
Mhm,
I was in high school, we said all the words,
mhm.
but when an adult came in the room, those words
Yep.
stopped.
Yeah.
I was in a situation where I'm talking to a group of high school kids,
Mhm.
and adults walk over and the words keep going. And
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, that's an adult. You don't talk like that as an
Yeah.
adult. It's like, man, forget that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like respect
Respect. Yes.
isn't always
Yes.
there. And then that
Yeah.
translates as you get older and you're entering the
Yep.
workplace,
Yep.
where Gen Z really, they love a flat, a
Yes.
flat
Yep.
structure. And it's like,
Yes,
well, no,
exactly.
there's
This
hierarchy.
is a bit of a matrix story. Yeah, like there's levels to this,
Yeah.
if you will. Yeah, and they don't typically like that or kind of know how to function in that. Yeah. I think that's a really good point, the respect piece, because I think respecting an interviewer's time, respecting your manager and how they're trying to grow you. Just like there's just those things that, yeah, I think do contribute to them struggling in the work. place. And I think like the two things that we've really hit on is like the ability to communicate and then respect.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am Gen Z's advocate. They know
Yes.
this. I got their
Yes.
back.
Love them. Yeah.
So I don't want this to be all negative.
Right.
What are some positives that you've seen? Some good
Yeah.
things you've seen coming out of this generation?
Yeah. Sorry, getting a phone call. Some good things that I've seen. I mean, I am so working in HR, especially, a sense of belonging, diversity, equity, like D and I are very important to me. And what I have seen is Gen Z is adamant about that. There is just this, I guess, this drive to stick up for, the most vulnerable, um, underrepresented groups, and to call out when the company is not, uh, really standing by their claim to having inclusive practices. Um, and that has been honestly transformative for me, because as a millennial, geriatric millennial, I'm like, I don't want to rock the boat too much, like there's got to be some sort of like, okay, I can't say this, like I have to, what I call respect, would call respect. And for them, it's disrespectful to not have inclusive practices. It's
Yeah.
disrespectful to not hire people who are disabled, who are queer, who are non-binary, who are from other underrepresented groups. Like that's unacceptable to not have a diverse workforce. And then also to not have inclusionary practices. And so our Gen Z, we have our all hands every couple of weeks, and at the end of every all hands, there's like, there's a hot seat where the CEO asks, answers questions that people send in. The questions, CJ, are bold AF. And I love
Really?
it. They ask really hard questions and they hold their feet to the fire. And then things change because of that. And
Wow.
so that for me has been like, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I can
Now, are
speak up.
these
Maybe
like anonymous questions? Or are they standing up with a microphone saying, "Hey, what's
they're
going on here?"
they're anonymous,
Oh,
but also people will then type in the Zoom chat like, I have more questions about and like build on those things, and they are bold questions.
man.
And I honestly have been transformed by that. I'm like, yeah, like we should be holding the ones in power accountable for what they say they're going to do, and I do think Gen Z has just such a strong sense of justice, and it causes them to, and like that kind of like, I don't know, we would probably call it disrespect, back in our day, but it's like, no, this is, I'm going to speak out because I have a voice, and this, we're not being who we say we are. And so that's been, really great. Yeah.
I think so much of that comes from they're not as work oriented or career
Yes.
oriented as
Yeah.
previous generations.
Yes.
And so
100%.
they look at you in your job and it's, what is it? FTP ATJ? Like,
ATJ. I don't know that.
F those people at that job.
I am very out of the loop. I'm very at the cusp of Gen X.
But see, so they come in with that energy and it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
this is a job. This is not my life. This is not my
Yes.
identity. It's not who I
Yes.
am. And
Yes.
so where
Yep.
that can maybe from an employer standpoint be
Mm-hmm.
a problem,
Mm-hmm.
from a very human standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way life is supposed to
That's
be. I'm
healthy.
not
Yeah.
living to work. Like my
Yeah.
life is not, this is not all
Yes.
of who I am. And
Yes.
because of that,
Mm-hmm.
I hold this a little more loosely
Yes.
and I can be a little more bold in asking
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
and
And that,
challenging you on things.
I do think that's something I learned. I used to be a workaholic and would feel guilty about taking time off or not being available. Even now, I struggle with that. Gen Z,
Nope.
bye. Like, I'm off. Like, don't talk to me. Like, and I will use my PTO. And I mean, those are those things that, um, their boldness and their ability to hold work looser
Yeah.
than maybe we have been able to, I think is also really admirable for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've learned from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, match that same energy.
Yeah.
If you are treating me a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and you are treating me like I'm not valuable, like I'm just another number in the system, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna treat you the same way.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
in previous generations, I think we would have been like, man, they treat me like crap, but I'm still
Yeah.
gonna give my all. I'm still gonna
Yeah. Yep.
absolutely.
Yep. It's like that. I don't know if you've seen that meme, but it's like places I'm not going in 2025, above and beyond, out of my
Yes.
way. Yes, that energy.
Oh, I need to find that and post that today.
Yes, yes. So good. I'll look for it and send it to you. But yeah, I
Mm,
saw that and I was like, yes, yes. I'm not like, I'm going to do my work. I'm going to do it really well, but you cannot have my soul. Like, and I
listen, this
used to
is
try to give my soul, So.
there was a conversation I had at an employer at one point
Mm-hmm,
where you've known me for over a decade now.
mm-hmm,
I've
mm-hmm,
always got 87 things going on. It's just the
mm-hmm,
way
mm-hmm.
I'm built.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, this needs to be your primary and your main thing. I go, I hear you.
Mm-hmm,
You're right. But there are 720 hours in a month.
mm-hmm.
160 of those go to work.
Yeah.
If I'm sleeping the way I'm supposed to, 225 go to sleep.
Mm.
That leaves me with 335 hours to do what I want.
Yeah.
You don't own those 335. I'm going
Right.
to do what I want with those 335.
That's amazing.
And that's on that. Like,
right. And if you like, I don't know what to tell you. It just is what it is. Like, that's
man,
amazing. I love that. Yeah.
you get your
Yeah.
160.
Yeah.
Above and
Yeah.
beyond, we
Yeah.
not doing that.
Yeah.
Out of my way, we
Right.
not doing that.
We're
But
not
you'll get
doing
your
that. Above
160.
and
Don't worry.
beyond. Yes.
And I'm gonna do my 160 well.
Really well.
Really
I'm
well.
going to hit the nail on the head every time, but then I'm gone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you get no more of me. Yeah, I think Gen Z, for all of the, it's interesting because like that communication piece comes in place just kind of like in everyday kind of conversations. But when there's an issue or there's an injustice that they feel, that's when they know how to talk. And I appreciate that, I really appreciate that.
You think about them and their earliest years, like their formative years, were Occupy Wall Street.
Yes.
Like very early in their
Oh,
lives.
yes.
Gen Z's 97.
Yeah.
Occupy Wall Street was what, 2009?
Yep.
So you're 12 years old and you are seeing people marching and protesting and say, we're not going to take this.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, we hit the streets for Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter,
Their
yeah.
entire lives have been,
Yes.
you think about the war in
Resist.
Iraq, right?
Yeah.
Their entire lives have been seeing people older than them resist and fight and say, we're not going to take this. So of course they come in with that.
I love that. Yeah. That is such a good point. That gave me goosebumps. That's so good. Their whole lives, yeah. They've seen resistance. They've seen people speaking truth to power, and they're listening. They're paying attention, and they're doing that. Yeah, I think it's really wonderful.
That's good.
Even in the workplace, even if it annoys people.
Because we need that. Systems and structures don't change.
Right.
If we never have these conversations, if we don't have people who are willing to put the feet of those in power to the fire.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, love it.
Right. So as we wrap this up and bring this to a close, whenever I'm talking about Gen Z and I'm interviewing people about them, I like to ask, what's one piece of advice that you would give this generation?
Yeah. Take off your headphones and have conversations, especially with older people. Ask them questions. Try to understand, their background and where they come from. And like learn to appreciate older generations. And I think every generation probably says that. But I feel that in my bones now, like being over 40, having my husband's grandma who's like 86, and they don't live forever. And so there's things that there's wisdom that you need to capture. And so I think, really leaning into that, leaning into kind of learning from older generations and asking questions and being curious, while still keeping that fire in your belly, for
Mm,
justice. Yeah,
yeah.
it's important. Yeah.
Listen, organizations, I hope you heard that. And if you need someone to come in and talk to you about building transformational leadership and working in intergenerational team dynamics, I'm your guy. It's a
Hmm.
part of what I do. It's a piece of my consulting services. So I'm here to help you figure out how to bridge that gap between your generations. Marquita, thank you for joining me this week
Yeah.
on Tell Me
Thank,
More. Man,
thank you for inviting me. It's great.
listen, love this conversation.
Yeah.
Do you want people to follow you if they want to follow you?
You know what? It wouldn't be very fun because I rarely post. So, I'm on LinkedIn. You can come
There you
holler at
go.
me over there. Yeah, that's probably where I'm most active. But even then, but yeah, my LinkedIn, you can just search Marquita Farmer Lewis, and you can find me. I'm probably the only one. So,
Perfect.
yeah,
Listen,
awesome.
thank you again for tuning
Hmm.
in to Tell Me More. Like, comment, do all the things that Al Gore's rhythm says we're supposed to do to make this grow. And I'll see you next week as I ask you to tell me more.